Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, and most definitely in front of me today, I talk about tropical houseplants. And obviously today's video is going to be another continuation of the plant review series, and it is about the beast of an Anthurium that I have got right next to me. Obviously, I don't need to do a head test. I think you can see that it's a relatively large leaf Anthurium. Welcome to everybody that's coming back again. As you always know, the chapters will be down below. If you want to skip to your favorite topic, you can. And for the new people, welcome. It's nice to have you along for the ride, essentially. And I'm just going to set some ground rules for this review. People that have been here for a while will probably know this already. By default, this review is going to be biased. It's going to be my experience growing this specific plant in my conditions, which is in the UK, in my conservatory, and whatever that might mean in terms of light levels, in terms of humidity, and in terms of the overall care that I might be giving this due to its environment. But I do encourage you, as I do with all of these videos, if you've got this plant and you've got your own review that you would like to add, please do drop it down below. Hopefully these videos will become a repository of information that people can look at to see what it's actually like to live with this specific plant. So moving into the first topic, which is background as always, I think straight off the bat, I'll lift up the plant so you can see it, and it has got an old leaf that is yellowing off and it's going to die off. But you know, on my channel, I do warts and all, but you can see this is going to be exceptionally difficult to film. You can see the three large leaves. I mean, in all fairness, the fourth one that's going is relatively sizable, but let me pop this back down and we can chat. As always, I will be inserting clips throughout the video, close-ups of this plant so you can see it in a bit more detail. So I will try and see if I can find, let me just move this slightly out of the way and put a picture here of what this plant looked like when I first got it. And this is from my plant care app, so please don't judge. The picture quality is probably not going to be great. But this one does have an interesting backstory, how this plant came into my care. Now, this is probably a 2 or 3-year-old plant at this point. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I will obviously have that in the title of the video, so you probably know. But I did get this plant as part of a different purchase, and that was the interesting thing about this. So some of you might know when I got my first Gloriosum, which I've still got, and it's small, probably not that small anymore. It's actually growing quite happily now, but the seller that I got it from wasn't great. It came with all of its roots rotted out. It had some massive leaves, but I was a bit disappointed, to say the least. Goes without saying that I have not used that seller since. And to be fair as well, I got two plants. So it was the Gloriosum and the Veitchii. Both of them weren't great, basically. The Veitchii is still a heck of a lot smaller than my big Veitchii, which I've done another review and I'll link it up the top there as well. But yeah, it wasn't great. So I found a really lovely individual on Instagram, and this is a story of how the kind of Gloriosum came to me. And I can't remember if it was a free cutting or if I ended up paying a tiny bit of money for it, but way under market value. And I did have that conversation, I think, with that individual, and they knew it, but they heard the story and they were just like, look, you've been after the Gloriosum, and this is when you really couldn't get any Gloriosums. They would go really, really quickly. Obviously, I know, at least here in the UK, the market is a bit more readily available for them at the moment. But she did mention that this plant really wasn't giving her much joy. She claims that this is a mettalicum, so it's an Anthurium mettalicum, and that is what I'm going to title this video as. I have featured this plant in different other videos. There's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions as to what it might be. A lot of people saying it's not a mettalicum. The problem is I do not know what it is if it's not a mettalicum. So I will be putting close-ups, as I said, throughout. Some people were wondering about the petiole. I don't think I put that in the previous video. I will see if I can get some close-ups for this video. It's annoying because obviously the inflorescence would tell you a lot more. And I have had inflorescences on this plant, and I have since pollinated them, and I've got seedlings from it crossed with the crystallinum, I think. I also think I crossed this with the Vitatifolium, so Lessons learned when I was doing the pollination, I labeled nothing. So I don't know. So when I do pollinations again, I might label them a bit better to see what the crosses are, because I've got nearly 400 seedlings and I can guess which ones are the ones that are crossed with the crystallinum because the silveriness is coming out quite strongly, but this one and the Vitarifolium are a bit more challenging at such a baby stage. But yeah, so this one has a bit of an identity crisis, really. It could be a mettalicum. I'm assuming it's a mettalicum. I was also looking online and I think this looks like it might be an Anthurium magnificum Verde. Not entirely sure, but yeah, the leaves are quite interesting. They are kind of leathery. There's a slight, almost velvetiness. It's a very interesting texture. But yeah, this was a relatively established chunk. I think it had 1 or 2 leaves on it when it first came to me, and it has sized up beautifully. But yeah, I think that's the kind of background and a bit of a backstory on how this plant came into my care. I don't know if I need to add anything else. No, I think that's everything. Let's move on to the next topic. So speed of growth, this is an interesting one with this one. So I have to say, probably from all of my Anthuriums, this is one of the fastest Anthuriums that I own. And that's saying something considering the size of the leaves. This is one of the Anthuriums that even with how mature the leaves are, I can usually keep about 3 to 4 leaves on it at any given time, which can be a bit of a challenge for a lot of people. So this is quite good. It does grow fast. Is it the fastest Anthurium? Maybe not the fastest Anthurium that I've experienced in my care, but it's definitely a close second or third. And the thing that I will say, it's also quite a reliable grower. Now, that being said, in the winter it either stops growing entirely or it might bring out a new leaf or 2 new leaves during the winter months, which is absolutely fine. And I will use the benchmark that I always use with this. If I'm benchmarking this against golden pothos, for instance, if that's bringing out 2 or 3 leaves in the summer months, this might bring out a month, by the way. Need to put it in context memo. Yeah, so 2 to 3 leaves in a month. This one will bring out maybe 1. But for an Anthurium, that's not necessarily slow. So yeah, it is a relatively fast grower, as at least it has been in my experience. For the eagle-eyed amongst you, when I was bringing it up, hopefully you might have been able to see, I have since transitioned this into pon. I did have it in my aroid mix, and I'll talk a bit more about that in the accessories and care section. But the reason why I put it in pon might be one of those things that surprises you, but I think instead of me kind of prattling on about that now, I might just talk about that in the accessories section. So let's move on to the next topic. So moving on to ease of propagation with this one. Again, people that have been here for a while know that I haven't really, other than pollinating inflorescences, I will say that I haven't actually done the usual chonk method. I keep saying this. At some point, I do need to be brave enough and cut a chonk and hope that it works. But again, the people that have been here for a while know that I had a couple of bad experiences when I bought chonks. So I don't know if it's going to be different if I'm the one doing it. This one arguably does have enough of a stem. Sorry, I'm looking down at its stem, that I should be able to do that. I might be brave this winter and try it. And I know I should probably be doing that in the summer, but I would assume this is kind of probably based on how it grows and based on how substantial the aerial roots are and quite how chunky they are. Very similar to the clarinarium and the crystallinum. I'm kind of looking down at my crystallinum there, but very similar to that. So I would assume it's relatively hardy. I mean, the leaves, the way that they are, they're quite tough, leathery leaves. So I would imagine this is a relatively robust Anthurium. In terms of pollination, it was relatively straightforward, actually. And I've got a pollination video. I know some people have asked, and I think it's because of the way that I named that video, but I will link it at the top there. This was actually, what can I say about the pollination? This was actually a faster pollination than my Vitarifolium. Took forever for the berries to mature enough to take from and then plant them out. Crystallinum was kind of medium speed. This one was the faster. I mean, it still took a beat to get going. It didn't generate anywhere near as many berries, and it might have been the way that I pollinated this specific one. It didn't generate anywhere near as many berries as my Vitarifolium or my Crystallinum. As I said, it might be a pollination issue, or it might be the fact that it takes to pollination a bit more with difficulty, essentially. Availability on this one. So this is an interesting one. And again, I'll say it again, as I said towards the beginning of the video. I will assume that I am correct in my identity of this plant and say that it is a mettalicum. Now, it's an interesting one because I don't think the mettalicum is one that probably either a lot of people are aware of, and probably also that a lot of people might necessarily want. Now, I didn't know that I wanted this plant, and to be fair, as I said, the person that I bought it from really had fallen out of love, showed me some pictures, and I was like, she was just like, I can do you a good deal. I think she really kind of wanted it out of her care because she was running out of space as well. I can sympathize at the moment. But yeah, it wasn't one that she kind of had a lot of affinity towards. I will say I have very much fallen in love with this Anthurium. I think it probably has to be one of my favorite Anthuriums, just purely because for me, it's a consistent grower. The leaves are spectacular. It did take a beat. I can't remember if it was just before I moved to this location or prior to that. It may have had a bit of root rot. I think, if I remember correctly, I did have to repot it at some point, so I think it may have done. But it bounced back beautifully, probably more so than some of my other Anthuriums. So as I was saying before, the tiny Veitchii that I got with the Gloriosum where they were both struggling, that still really hasn't bounced back. This one did beautifully. So this really does have a very, very fond place in my heart. However, I think it's mainly because a lot of people don't know it. I think it might also be the fact that a lot of people that want to get an Anthurium, they want the silveriness, they want the really intense venation. This one doesn't have it. But like every time I touch this plant, oh my God, this is amazing. So the texture of this for me is like unlike any other Anthurium that I've got, the kind of feel of the leaves. And it's also hardy, so I would say definitely consider it as well. And the lobing can be quite deep. It wasn't when it was a bit younger, but it is getting much deeper lobes now. It's a very wide plant. I think that's why a lot of people were saying that this is probably not a mettalicum, because that tends to be a bit longer rather than wider. But as it's getting, I'm trying to see, I think this might be the newest leaf, but I don't know whether or not these leaves are a bit rounder because of my conditions, and I'm not really giving it much to grow on. I'm looking at it now, it needs more sphagnum moss as a collar around its growing stem, but I'll deal with that after the video. But in terms of availability, I really went off on a tangent. I am so sorry. In terms of availability, as I said, it doesn't come up very often. I don't think there's a lot of people that are looking for it. I would imagine I got it for mid to mid-high double digits, but I think it's because that person wanted to get rid of it. I think this does carry a bit of a price to it, especially at the maturity level that I got it. And hopefully I would have found a picture in that original background section to show you what the plant was like when I first got it. It was a relatively mature Anthurium at that point. I got it for a steal, because as I said, I think she was trying to get rid of it. I think this plant now, based on a couple of things that I've seen online, again, it doesn't come up very often as a mettalicum. To be fair, even the magnificum Verde doesn't come up that often. I've seen it on the Equigenera website recently because I have done an order from them, first time ever. So hopefully if that arrives okay, I will be doing an unboxing. And the bit of a spoiler alert, a lot of the plants from my wish list video are going to be in that order. So if you want to see me with the joy of a small kid, please do tag along for that video. I was hoping it was going to be arriving on the 16th September. I think I misread their website. They confirmed that everything is fine, but they said end of October. I am going to be honest, I'm a bit worried. Had I known that on the website, I might have not placed the order for quite as many plants and maybe quite as many sensitive plants as I did, knowing it was going to come towards the end of October, because anybody who lives in the UK or knows the UK, where the end of October, it's starting to get quite cold. So I thought middle of September, great, the weather still should be okay, the plants shouldn't have much shock. But we shall see what happens. It's going to be exciting. It's the first time I've ordered from somewhere outside of the EU or the UK. So stay tuned for that. But yes, this is a plant that I think is still kind of going to be high double digits to low triple digits at the moment. And again, I will say this one more time. Sorry for all the tangents in this section, but yeah, getting very excited about this plant. Moving on to pests with this one. So, and I will see if I can add a couple of clips here and there, but I'm looking at it now. Everybody that's been around for a while will know me kind of talking and then kind of looking away from you and just looking at the plant and going, ooh, is that a pest? Do I need to do something after filming? But this plant, I will say, generally has been, out of a lot of my anthuriums, I mean, a lot of my anthuriums generally don't have pests, but this one more so than any of the rest of them. So I've occasionally seen a mealybug, one solitary mealybug on this, when it's close to other plants that generally do struggle with mealybugs. It don't seem to be gravitating towards this too much. Does it have some whitefly? I'm looking at it now. Yeah, but we're looking at maybe a handful where a lot of other plants have got loads of whitefly. I'm still trying to deal with that. Anybody who's got any ideas on how to deal with whitefly successfully in a household environment, please do let me know. And I've tried the sticky traps already. They don't seem to be doing anything. I've tried the predatory wasps. They did okay for a bit. I think I might need to do that again and do it for a longer period of time. But if you've got any experience and you've had success, do let me know. But I think that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think, did this maybe get spider mites once? Yes, maybe, but not for that long. And it didn't kind of go crazy with it. So relatively pest-free plant, at least it has been in my experience and in my conditions. Moving on to accessories and care, at least this has been my care in my conditions, which is kind of unique to me. Kaylee Ellen did a very good video recently about this, so do check that out as well. She made a good valid point with a lot of care videos, and this is the same issue I've had a lot of the times. The one element that most people don't talk about in care is you and what your personality is like, how you treat your plants. Somebody can only talk about the care that they have in their conditions with their personality and what they do, whether they're in overwater or underwater. But I will tell you about what I have done to keep this plant happy. And I mentioned earlier on, I did have it in, so I rehabbed this a bit on a heat mat. And anybody who's seen my heat mat video will know that that went a bit sideways. This one was a plant that didn't get too beat up by that, to be fair. Then I've always had that in my arrowed soil mix. I've had this in a net pot, did well. I've had this in a terracotta pot, it did well. The interesting thing that I found about the care of this plant, and a couple of people on previous videos who do have a mettalicum, I think they were saying, experienced the same thing, that kind of stopping in the wintertime and really pushing out growth in the summertime. But they were also saying that, and this is true, I found this as well with mine, it got very thirsty in the summer and it almost didn't want any water in the winter. So that's something to be aware of there. So as I said, I mentioned earlier on, I had a bit of a root rot situation. And at that point, I thought, okay, let's remove it, let's rehab it a bit, and let's move it into pon. And I have moved it since into pon, and I will see if I can lift it up so you might be able to see. Hopefully I'll be able to insert some clips. That is choose a pon. For the longest period of time, I didn't have it with a water reservoir at the bottom, mainly because I transitioned it in the winter, and that is obviously when it didn't need that much water. So I knew and I planned ahead and said, okay, it can kind of transition into the pond without a reservoir, and by the time it needs a reservoir, it will be the summer where it will be a bit thirstier anyway. And it has worked out beautifully. Yeah, so at the moment it's in choose a pond. I've got it with a water reservoir in the bottom. I am starting to pull back on my water reservoir filling now as we're coming into the slightly colder months. There's less light. For the people that might be eagle-eyed, you might see that this video is slightly different. I did spend a lot of time yesterday taking down the shade cloth. Also, because I know some of you might be asking, I will do a video as to how I've prepared my space for the winter, also including a layer about trying to make this space as energy efficient as possible because the prices are ridiculous. So watch out for that video coming soon. But with this one, as I said, and the Lechuza pond has done really well. The water reservoir is loving life and it's doing exceptionally well. Do you need something like a support stick? Maybe if it gets particularly big. I have had no need for it. There's a tiny support stick just to kind of keep it upright because it's so forward heavy. I've got it in a slightly deeper pot. If you saw, normally I wouldn't do that, but when I first got the cutting and ever since then, there's quite a lot of the stem that's stuck in there. Actually, that would have been a good bit to cut potentially. Interesting. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for accessories with this. Yes, I fertilize it weekly, and that doesn't stop even in the summer. In the winter, I'm thinking actually maybe this might be one of the plants that I do pull back a bit on the fertilizer in the winter. But yeah, really straightforward. Doesn't need any specific care. As I've said, I've had it in chunky arrowed soil mix, did well. Had it in terracotta, did well. Had it in net pot, did well. Had it in pond, did well. Can you tell I like this plant? I am a huge fan of things that make my life easy. I've got enough dramatic plants that occasionally when I get a good, nice and easy one, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So bring this into a close and kind of some of my final thoughts. I will do the usual scoring. So knowing what I know now, if I didn't have this plant, would I be purchasing this? Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I would definitely want this in my collection. It is a showpiece. It is quite large. And again, I'll bring it up so you can kind of see the size of these leaves without it being dramatic. Because I know my Veitchii is taking some time to size up. And that can be dramatic at times. The Warwickwianum. So many horror stories. That is another one that I know a lot of people struggle with. That does get a lot of length. Granted, they are more strappy leaved. This one's more of a heart-shaped leaf, for me at least. As I said, it probably is meant to be a bit longer. If it is actually a mettalicum, this might be a hybrid. I don't know. But yeah, this is definitely a bit of a showpiece because it's a bit like, ooh, look at that. And the texture. I don't think I have, literally, I don't think I have any other plant that has got this kind of velvety, leathery, kind of almost suede. I want to say it's that kind of texture. It's really bizarre, like really soft plastic leather or pleather. I don't know how to describe it, and whatever I'm describing it as now is really not doing it justice. But yes, to answer the original question, 100% I would get this again. And then moving into scoring for this plant, so 0 or 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. Where would I rank this as a general houseplant? Because anthuriums can be a bit more tricksy. This one isn't too bad. I would probably give this a 7 as a general anthurium houseplant. As an anthurium, though, this would be a 9 or a 10 for me, which might be surprising for some people. But yeah, this is, I just love the fact that it's as easygoing as it is, to be honest. But yeah, hopefully I haven't prattled on too much. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Do let me know if I prattle on too much. I know some of you probably don't appreciate it, but yeah. I tend to do that a lot in my day-to-day life as well. So, but yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. As always, if you've got your own review for this plant, do drop it down below. If you've got your own opinions as to what this plant might be, please drop them down below and tell me why. Don't just tell me I think it's this. Tell me why you think it's that, especially if you've got what you think it is in your care. Tell me where the similarities are, because I'm still, like years later, still trying to figure out if this is actually a mettalicum. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.